According to Friedman, he defines agency relationship to be the relationship that exists between two persons when one, called the agent, is considered in law to represent the other, called the principal, in such a way to be able to affect the principal's legal position in respect of strangers or to the relationship by the making of contracts or the disposition of property. What Friedman is saying is that a person is only an agent insofar as his acts can result in some alteration of the principal's legal position. This definition is meant to indicate that although there may be many situations in which one person acts for and on behalf of another person, but this is not enough to ascribe the term agency to that relationship. What Friedman is saying is that that relationship will only amount to an agency relationship only when such representation is one that can affect the legal position of the principal. So the implication of this is that the law of agency has no relevance to social or non-legal obligations. So take for example where a wife represents her husband in a social function. That representation is not one that can affect the legal position of the principal, that is the husband. Hence, that cannot be defined as an agency relationship. So, it must also be emphasized that the legal purpose that is intended to be achieved by the employment of an agent need not to be a very complex or sophisticated one. Another feature of the definition given by Friedman is that it stresses the importance of the way in which the law regards the relationship that has been created. And this means that it is the law of the way that the parties have conducted themselves that is used as the metric for determining whether it is an agency relationship or not. In essence, it doesn't matter what the parties call the relationship. It is the law that will determine whether it is an agency relationship or not. So, and this is exactly what Lord Echel was saying, that there is no word that is commonly abused like the word agent. So you hear so many people referring to themselves as agents or defining their relationship as an agency relationship. What this definition is saying is that it is the law that determines whether it is an agency relationship or not. And Friedman is suggesting that one of the things that will impel the court to come to the conclusion that it is an agency relationship is when the court looks at the representation. The court asks whether that representation is one that can affect the legal position of the principal. If it cannot affect the legal position of the principal, then it is a non-legal obligation, which means it cannot amount to an agency relationship. And on the issue of the irrelevance, so to say, of the nomenclature that are ascribed to any relationship by the parties, we can see the case of Lam and Goring. In Lam and Goring, you find that the parties describe their relationship to be an agency relationship. By the end of the day, the court held that what exists between these parties was simply a sale. It was a relationship of buying and selling. Do you understand? They bought and they sold. That's just simply it. That it didn't really amount to an agency relationship. And from these definitions, there are some factors that need to be considered. They merit consideration in light of their relevance and necessity for the understanding of the legal nature and function of the agency relationship. The first is consent. You find out that there is a theory known as the consent theory that tries to explain or that tries to give a conceptual clarification on the meaning and purpose of agency. And you find out that most of the definitions that we've advanced so far by writers, they revolve around the idea that the principal and the agent have actually agreed, either in the form of a contract or otherwise, that the agent should represent the principal. So several writers, they normally follow that particular trajectory to define an agency relationship as to be a relationship that exists based on the consent of the principal and the agent. And it is as if there could not be an agency relationship without the consent of the principal and the agent. So when we interrogate Bousted's definition, you see that he also defined the agency relationship within the parameters of the consent theory. When you look at the American restatement law, as we have examined, it's the same thing. And more particularly, you hear Lord Pearson in the case of Gamac Grain versus HMF, where he stated categorically that the relationship of principal and agent can only be established by the consent of the principal and agent. And then he went on to explain that consent is always necessary, either expressly or by implication from their words or conduct. Writers like Friedman have actually had issues with this submission by Lord Pearson. You hear Friedman saying that the statement by Lord Pearson is open to criticisms on different grounds. And the first, according to Friedman, is that it presupposes that consent is the basis of agency, whereas it is still suggested that it is for the law to determine what is or is not agency. So this means he recognizes that it is still the law that determines whether such a relationship exists or not, by way and not by way of a mechanical determination of searching for consent. So Friedman is saying that what Lord Pearson was saying is open to criticism. That Lord Pearson and several other writers that have defined it within the consent theory parameter. And the problem there, according to Friedman, is that they tend to make consent to be the basis of agency, whereas it has been established that it is still the law that determines whether an agency relationship exists or not. And so he's saying that it is not in all circumstances that the principal and the agent would actually consent to creating an agency relationship. And this is valid. By the time we examine the various ways in which agency relationship can be created, you find that the agency relationship can be created by operation of the law. That is agency by necessity. In agency by necessity, you find that the principal and agent have not actually consented to creating that particular relationship. It is the law that has imputed that relationship on these parties. So to use consent as the basis of agency is to some extent flawed, at least according to Friedman. However, I particularly also have some submissions to make on